Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Once in a while, you come across someone where you're like, wow, what a cool business. What a cool client list. What a cool niche. What a cool person. So yes, I have the quadruple cool person that you need to know about, Kate O'Neill of KOinsights.com. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a great descriptor. Quadruple cool.
Quadruple
I've
cool.
never even been single cool in my whole life.
You totally have. You totally have. And we're going to dig into all of this. So first things first, please tell us a little bit of the backstory. So what was the professional journey that brought you to the truly cool work that you're doing today? And what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Well, it's funny. Last time I was a guest on your show, which I think was 4 years ago, we had a wonderful conversation then. I believe you referred to me at the time as the tech queen. So I like that descriptor too, although quadruple cool may have just beat it out. But the technology background definitely begins the answer to that question. I have been in technology for about 30 years of my career, and it's been through a bunch of different kinds of incarnations. So I've had pioneering roles doing first of their kinds of things, oftentimes things I didn't realize were first of their kind, like building the first ever intranet at Toshiba, not really knowing it was the first of its kind intranet. But it was a resource for the hardware developers to share internal documentation. And that helped me figure out how I needed to build an intranet, which turned out to be the first. I had also built the first departmental website at the University of Illinois at Chicago's Language Laboratory, which I was the director of at the time. So that was the previous job role. And so all of this showed this interest in whatever the new technology was and how it could be leveraged to help solve problems for people who needed to be able to do what they were doing. And that just led in a series of subsequent job roles, continually down this path of innovative technology and into, sort of cutting edge roles, culminating in being the very first content manager at Netflix as one of the company's first 100 employees. So it's a really kind of fun start to my professional career, just having one after the other of these cutting edge, innovative, pioneering types of roles. And I've been able to then carry that through for the last 30 years of just bringing what insights that shed on me, that sort of brought along with me, the wisdom from that, not from my own wisdom entirely. Like I've definitely collected my own insights, but I've also been able to observe good decision making by other leaders and been able to collect this sense of how we go about using technology to solve human problems and make sure that we're using it well. So that's been the way that I've been able to set up this business where I'm helping leaders in really big companies. As you said, there's some enviable companies that I've been able to work with. I can't believe sometimes the client roster that I've been able to accumulate over the years. It's been fantastic.
Well, let's talk about that, because this totally struck me as I was preparing for this episode. Like, if you visit Kate's website, you're like, okay, wait a second. Wait, just hang on. We got Google, Adobe, United Nations, IBM, Zoom, Roche, Etsy. We got Yale. We got the city of Amsterdam. We got Microsoft. Like, whoa. So my question to you, Kate O'Neill, quadruple cool, as you had this portfolio of amazing jobs with amazing companies, if we flash forward to today's success, is part of this maintaining and growing your professional network? So would you consider yourself a really great relationship builder and relationship maintainer? So you had a lot of buddies from, let's say, Netflix. You had a lot of buddies from when you were doing all those other jobs that you mentioned, and you just kept nurturing those relationships? Is that part of the secret or no?
I think that there may be something to that, but Dory Clark
Sure.
and her recent book, The Long Game, that's very resonant for me. Like, I don't necessarily think of my network and the networking that I do within it as being about selling all the time. I think of it as being, that there are people that I'm connected to that are genuinely interesting to me and that I had a really great time working with. So it's nice to keep in touch with them, and I'm genuinely interested in knowing what sort of twists and turns their careers have taken. And it just so happens to be the case that over time, those people usually ascend into positions where they have some buying power. So one of the times that I worked with Google, it was a former colleague of mine at Netflix who's now in an executive role at Google, who was bringing me in for that. And she actually, when I came onto the briefing call for that engagement, I asked, what was it about my work that made you want to bring me in for this? And they gave me the all-time greatest quote, and I still use it in a lot of my marketing, which was that they said, we love the way that your work is about optimism, about the future of technology, and yet with a heavy dose of realism, and sort of not letting people off the hook for making sure that they deliver the goods on how to make it good for humans. So it was a fantastic sort of juxtaposition of keeping alive these connections with wonderful, interesting people, and constantly trying to update my skills and make sure that I'm solving relevant problems and staying up to date with what matters for people in the world. And those two things just happen to reconnect on a regular basis.
Yes. Well, this goes into chapter 942 of my upcoming book. No, that's not actually true, but it is one of my mantras around sales and selling, which is, don't worry about being a better salesperson. Be a better person and more sales will happen. Meaning, stay genuinely connected, stay genuinely interested with zero selfish intent and zero intent to pitch or push or peddle or sell. And, the right people will connect with you when they have a need or a curiosity or a problem. And that story, it's nice. It's a nice soundbite, but you totally embody the success of that strategy. Is don't worry about being a quote unquote better salesperson. Be a better person, right? Stay connected, stay caring, stay curious, stay in the relationships that you've built, and then go and build new ones, and business will follow.
I don't want to denigrate sales, because I know that's a big part of your profession and the advisory that you give, because I have actually engaged actively in sales and done things like, a previous consulting incarnation. I was doing the active everyday cold calling and that sort of thing. One of my favorite stories from that time still kind of came back to this whole notion of building a network and being an authentic person, because I was doing my preparation each evening at the end of a business day for the calls I was going to make in the morning. And so I had, at the end of a day, a list of 5 or 10 people I was going to call. I went to one night, I closed it out, and then I went to a mixer at the Chamber of Commerce that night. And I saw on a guy's name tag the exact name that I was going to call the next morning. And I said, "Oh, you're on my list of cold calls for tomorrow." And he said, "Well, now it won't be cold." And we got to chatting for a while, and it was great. It was a way that we actually were able to warm it up and have an actual relationship. But I think that also comes back to just be a person who's telling the truth, and you're being yourself and you're being authentic. Those worlds will collide.
Hang on. Let's back up the truck. Beep, 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 beep. Listen, I have a brand new sales book out there. You got to get your hands on it. It is awesome. It is amazing. It is fantastic. It is useful, practical, actionable, and a ton of bonuses are waiting for you over at doitselling.com. Grab your copy right now and grab all the bonuses, goodies, companion tools, and downloads that go with the book. You'll love it. I guarantee it.
And I don't denigrate selling. I just denigrate stupid selling.
Yes.
Just to be clear, right? Selling that is genuine and authentic and human and humane. I love that kind of selling. And there is a proactive component to it, but I think throwing fuel on the fire with the relationship building and your facility with building relationships, maintaining relationships, and deepening relationships, I'm guessing has stood you in very good stead, which is awesome because that makes it fun, right? That makes it fun.
Yeah, I think for everybody, it makes it fun. And I think people are genuinely interested in working with people that they enjoy working with. That's just kind of a no-brainer, right? So when you have the opportunity to say, you know, someone may reach out to me through my website and say, we need to bring in a keynote speaker for our end of year meeting, which is what happened with the city of Amsterdam, for example. But once I got on a phone call with them and started talking about what it is they were trying to do, I was genuinely fascinated with what they were up to. And they were genuinely fascinated with the work that I'd been doing. So it was a really authentic connection. It wasn't just, you know, them trying to fill a need and me trying to close a sale. It was like them telling me about this 7-point plan that Amsterdam had for its future and me going like, oh my gosh, that's fascinating. I absolutely want to be there. And then you find ways of packaging things up more creatively and coming to win-win solutions more, I think, when you're coming at it from that perspective.
Absolutely. Take us back to what was the transition from corporate technology leader to entrepreneur? And when you first launched your entrepreneurial business, how did it start to change shape or format or structure as things progressed? But first, give us the transition from corporate to entrepreneur, and then let's talk about some of the early entrepreneurial experiments, if you will.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually have the kind of story that's probably a very frustrating answer to that question, which is that all my life, it has just gone back and forth. I've always been someone who was interested in, you know, kind of doing a little freelance of some sort on the side, even as a teenager. You know, I had a teenage consulting business or a freelance business doing translation and interpretation. And then doing some clarinet lessons and things like that, you know, just here and there, teaching things or coaching people on things. And then, you know, having a corporate job and making my way up the ladder in different respects. And then taking time to build a consulting business for a while and then going back into a corporate job. So I've done that back and forth numerous times. And I think you and I were having a conversation a little bit ago about self-publishing books versus traditional publishing books. And I think that a very similar kind of crossover knowledge applies here. Like you become better at either approach when you're carrying the insights from one into the other. So I don't feel like it was always my destiny to be a consultant or an entrepreneur or running a solopreneurship or running a small business. It was not always my destiny to be a corporate leader. I feel like it's always been my destiny to be solving whatever problem interests me the most at that time and to be trying to use all of my faculties in the pursuit of what makes me passionate and what makes me sort of really turned on by the purpose of it all. So that's been a different format at different times of my life.
Yes, absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit, what does the current KO Insights menu consist of? How do people hire you? What's the mix of speaking, consulting, training, books, facilitation? What are the different ways that people can use your genius?
Yeah, it's funny. Last time that you and I talked, we talked about the strategy articulation workshop, and that is something that is still an offering that KO Insights has, but the offering has shifted somewhat toward this comprehensive sense of why is it that we are doing the strategy articulation workshop? It's because you need clarity. And why do you need that clarity? You need that clarity so that you can make better decisions. And the decisions that you need to be able to make, you need to be clearer about because difficult. It's complex right now, especially, CEOs and leaders all over have a very difficult time with decision making today. Everything is accelerated by technology. There's the complexity of geopolitics in the mix, supply chain complexity, all of the economic uncertainty that accompanies everything today, and political sort of stories within the US and elsewhere. So there are all kinds of reasons why decision making is more complicated, or feels at least more complicated today than ever. And I think what ends up coming out of that is that, first of all, so much of that complexity is driven by technology, and technology's fairly unique ability to accelerate and scale and complicate matters. So coming out of a technology background, that is one thing that I offer into as an advisor in a strategic capacity, is I'm going to help you, leader, think about technology in a much clearer way. And we're going to bring all of these different facets of future readiness into the discussion too. One of the things that I find is that, so the work I've done over the last many years has been futurist adjacent. I don't think of myself as a futurist per se, but so much of strategy work is about being ready for the future. So that's the work that I'm helping my clients do, is really think about, here's the product offering we have today. How ready is it for the future? Here's the way I'm leading the company today. The operational decisions we're making, the infrastructure, the teams we've built, the culture we're building. How ready is that for the future? And kind of taking that to a lot of different levels, and thinking about that in very holistic kinds of ways. So what I find is that it's funny, future ready decision making very often is tantamount to ethical decision making. And ethical decision making is tantamount to future ready decision making. So those things are part of my brand, of the work that I've done. People think of me as the tech humanist that comes along for the ride. And bound up within that tech humanist branding, I think, is this sense that we're talking about ethics and responsibility. And we are, but we're talking about it as a way of being more sustainable and more ready for the future. So these are all kind of bound up together in ways that, if you're the right client at the right moment, those things are absolutely the right kinds of components to the question we're trying to solve.
Yes, I know, terrific episode here, but have you seen our latest web training? Oh my goodness, pop over there right now, or as soon as you're done listening to this episode, it's doitmarketing.com/webinar. See you over there. Back to the good stuff.
So I have to ask you, you and I were both at a conference recently where artificial intelligence was the headliner. There wasn't a human headliner, but this topic was the headliner. And I'm sure there's many, many conferences all over the world right now where AI is, if not the central focus, certainly one of the tracks and one of the channels that people need to be thinking about as far as future impact, whether the future, like you said, is a scary place or an optimistic place, whether it's going to replace you, whether it's going to, the robots are taking over like in the Terminator. When your clients come to you for the advisory work that you do, and they're still running around a little bit with the chicken like the head cut off because things are moving so incredibly quickly with the world of AI, what are some things that you're advising them to look at or think about or ask when it comes to AI that brings this, the tech humanist perspective onto artificial intelligence? What are you telling them and advising them that maybe takes some of the drama and the panic out of the conversation?
Yeah, so it's funny that you brought up, you mentioned the sort of dystopia versus utopia framework, and that is one that's been part of my work for a while now. And my last book, A Future So Bright, dealt heavily with that theme about how we have a tendency to think about the future in this polarized way. It's either going to be all bad or it's going to be all good. And neither one of those is true. Obviously, it cannot possibly be true. Since we are not in a moment that is all good or all bad, we can thereby, deduce that the future will not be all good or all bad. And I think there's a similar type of thing that happens about decision making, and as it relates to AI and automation and other emerging technologies. This is just a matter of scale and capacity that brings the complexity to that decision making. But that decision making is often either too forward looking or too backward looking. And so one of the things that my new book does is start to try to tease out how your disposition as a decision maker or as a leader tends to skew. Either you're someone who is going to be driven to a very future-minded state. You're thinking about all of the ways that you can get ahead of your competitors by embracing AI and by automating the heck out of your business and putting all of the, taking off all the guardrails and just going full force, in which case you're moving too fast. You're moving ahead of our understanding, and you're probably not thinking through all of the complications and consequences that that's going to bring about for you. On the other hand, there are plenty of leaders who are dragging their heels on a number of transitions and transformations that they should be making within their business because they already know the consequences of not adapting their business to this moment. And that relates to AI, but it also relates to things like climate change and other kinds of sustainability. So there are these big factors that affect whether and I talk about it in the context of the harms of action versus the harms of inaction. So depending on where you are on the sort of timeline of what you can know about the future, what you can know about the past, what you can know or ask about the present, and what you can anticipate about the future, that sort of timeline gives you the sense of where are you in the context of how harmful would a decision be right now, as opposed to once you have a little more data, as opposed to once you have a little more context. So we sort of plot that along that timeline. And those are the kinds of decision-making tools that this book and the work I've been doing have been able to offer to leaders. It's a much more rigorous set of tools, a much more and yet not more complex in the execution of the tools. I think once you gain familiarity with the tool set of decision-making, decision-making comes a pretty easily through this tool set. It's just that I think that people are going about their decision-making with whatever tools they've already got, and those tools are often inadequate to the moment that we're in. So those are some of the issues that I find that leaders are dealing with, and those are some of the sort of topics that are part of it. And we talk about that whether I'm on a keynote stage or advising a set of leaders, one-on-one or as a team in a boardroom, that sort of thing. It's a wonderful gift to be able to share these tools and see people actually have aha moments and be able to apply them to what they're doing.
Yes. Well, I think, and you put it, the moniker that you've had for many years now about the tech humanist, that's sort of the clue to my next question. A lot of leaders, when they're thinking about strategy and AI and the future of technology, would it be an accurate statement to say it's not about the technology in and of itself?
Right.
It's about how are the humans interacting with or changing or making different decisions based on the technology and based on the opportunities that technology is opening up and creating, or even accelerating. So when you're brought in to do a big change management project, you're working much more with the people and the psychology than you are with the computers and the technology.
Yeah. So two things about that. One is that it's been something that I've said for years, that the funny thing about digital transformation is it never starts with technology, or it shouldn't anyway, right?
Yeah.
You should not be starting digital transformation projects or strategy from technology. It should never be. And it always used to be. When I worked in big companies, a lot of times my boss would come in and smack a newspaper clipping down on my desk, and it was a headline about the cloud. And they'd be like, "What's our cloud strategy?"
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't have a cloud strategy. We have a strategy. And the cloud solutions may be a part of how we deploy against that strategy. But the strategy is the strategy. It is not a cloud strategy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have forgotten that, if they ever had that philosophy, and suddenly there's an AI strategy for every company. It just doesn't make any sense. That's not how it goes. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah.
So it's good to remind people to step back from the sense that they need to. I think that there is a sense that they need to have an AI strategy. You do not need to have an AI strategy. You need to have a strategy. And AI very likely has a role to play in it, because it has a role to play in so much of how we're operationalizing and implementing strategy across many, many different kinds of businesses. The other piece, though, is to remember that when we talk about transformation, that is inherently a catching up process. Innovation is a getting ahead process. And these things are not one or the other. They work in tandem with one another. So that is also something that I plot along this timeline. In my book, I refer to it as the now next continuum. So the thought that, what we bring out of the past into the present and what we look ahead to in the future, we talk about, the notion of what we understand and what we can understand, and about the harms of action and inaction. But we also talk about this notion of transformation being about bringing us out of the past into the present and catching up with expectations in the marketplace and competitors and so on. Innovation, though, moves us forward. Innovation is about asking those big questions and thinking in new ways and novel ways about not just about what we have been doing or what we could be doing, but fundamentally, and this is the title of this book, what is going to matter next in the future? When we think about what has mattered before and what matters now, those are the questions that drive transformation. We know that, for example, during COVID, there was an awful lot of digital transformation that took place because we needed to catch up to the moment of saying, look, we need to be able to do things related to online education. We need to be able to do online healthcare. We need to do, curbside pickup of food and things like that. That's catching up to the moment. But when we think about not just what matters now, but what matters in the future, what is likely to matter, what are the things that are changing? What are the trends that are moving us into the future? What's the trajectory look like? What can we increasingly see that are drivers that are going to be moving our industry forward or moving our competitors forward? Where do we want to be as an organization? And that's where the what matters next question takes us, is to say, how can we be innovative about that and not let an AI strategy lead us in that direction, but let a strategy, a clear-headed strategy where we've asked the right questions and we have allowed ourselves to really bring insights and wisdom and foresight into that equation. And now let AI and other technologies be part of how we execute against that and operationalize that.
Yes. And just again, for people listening, the title of Kate's new fantastic book is What Matters Next, and the subtitle I especially love, A Leader's Guide to Making Human-Friendly Tech Decisions in a World That's Moving Too Fast. So based on the subtitle of the book, I'm sure that with your clients and among the leadership teams that you work with, there are folks that are embracing this level of speed and excitement and optimism and innovation. And there's also some resistors. There are people who are literally throwing up their hands and saying, this is moving too fast. We are, we're a runaway train. This is out of control. We got to get back to the basics. Let's do it the way we've always done it. Foundational blocking and tackling. Let's not get fancy. Let's not get, to Star Trek, Star Wars, take your pick. Let's not get too sci-fi here in the future. I'm guessing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that there's increasing polarization within the teams that you're working with. Some are very, very pro what's next, and some are stick in the mud, fear, resistance, hesitation. I know part of what you do is you get everyone excited, and you can meet them where they are and get them excited about what's possible for them. What are some of the newer strategies that you've been using to gain buy-in and overcome the resistance of those people that might not be as forward-thinking as their colleagues?
Well, one of the things that I love about this work and what I brought to it is that I'd been working for a while, for years. I've been developing a sort of proprietary process that I call the Insights Foresights model. And it's one that I never really knew how I was ever going to incorporate into a book or share with the public, but it's clearly at the core of my work and of my business, since my business is called KO Insights. It's been something that for many, many years has shaped my thinking. And it turned out that as I thought about how to address this dilemma that you allude to of people who are either moving too fast or moving too slow or feeling the strain of those different tensions, how to try to reconcile that. What struck me is it is the Insights Foresights model that kind of bridges that gap. Because what can happen is if we allow ourselves to ask better questions, which is really the starting point of this, we start from the understanding that oftentimes we think that we learn by asking questions and getting answers to those questions, but that's really only a very small part of the process. We learn by asking those questions, but also asking, have we asked the right question? Should we be asking better questions? Are there clearer questions? Are there questions that will bring us more insight? Let's get the best questions going, the better questions that we can. And then from that, what we notice is that as we ask those questions and we collect the answers to those questions, it really is a process of collection, because everybody has had the experience of asking a question and getting exactly as many answers as there are people on the team, right? You always get a mix of answers. And that's fine, because partly what a leader's job is to amalgamate those questions, to aggregate those answers and look for the insights in those answers. Where is there commonality between what people are saying? Where is there tension? And why is there tension? Is it tension because inherently the person who said this thing represents that role and this person who said this thing represents that role? Or are they actually advocating for something that runs counter to their roles and their positions? And what's kind of going on there? So we get an opportunity to really sit with something and find the wisdom that's hidden within it. That wisdom, incidentally, is timeless. And what's important about that is that once we start collecting them, we build a timeless, ongoing repository of wisdom that can help us shape decisions more and more quickly, more and more nimbly, and more irrespective of whatever the changes in our environment are. Then what we do is we look at the context and the externalities, the trends that are happening all around us. What's changing? What's making this feel so fast? Is it COVID? Is it, our competitors are launching a new product? What's happening that's making us feel like we need to move fast to address this moment? So then we can use the insight that we've just arrived at, plus the context, and arrive at a timely approach. Okay, this is how we're going to deal with this today. This is what we're rolling out to address what we need to do today. And there's almost like an exhaust from that process that comes off of this as steam from the process. And that's foresight. Foresight is what I call it, bankable foresight, because it's this beautiful thing that you can actually set aside and say, I don't need to deal with this today. But what that just did is give me a look ahead, something that's a trajectory, a clue that connects the dots from the insight, the wisdom I collected that's timeless, that tells me all about what's wise about my business and about the work I do, and foresight that says, this is what we're going to need to be doing down the road. And so as long as we can constantly be triangulating between those and making our best decisions for today, we're constantly going back to these questions and making sure we're asking better and better questions, getting clearer and clearer. That process continually pays dividends and continually makes us better, faster, more nimble, and just readier to make the kinds of decisions, regardless of what changes in the technology landscape, regardless of what changes in the competitive landscape. We're just readier. And I think that equation is going to be, it is genuinely my big gift that I give in this book is I'm sharing something that took me years and years to put together and has really benefited me and has benefited every client that I've consulted with and shared this with.
Yes.
So I really hope I get lots of stories back from readers about how much it helped them make better decisions.
Oh my gosh, so good. Well, and I also recently had the privilege of seeing you facilitate a room full of smart people. And when you dropped that little one-liner about insight versus foresight and how that's packaged, the entire room went silent. And you could hear multiple people go, "Ooh.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I mean, it was a blinding flash of genius. A blinding flash of genius. Everyone's pen, by the way, was like going in overdrive, going insight, foresight, insight, foresight.
And David, if I may, I just want to share because I think it's a really good, clear example of this. I have to, first of all, say, I did not arrive at this by myself. This is the work of many years of observing genius around me and distilling what is it that made that genius. And the most clear example I can give, and it's the one I go back to again and again, is that when I was at Netflix, it was 2000, 99, 2000, 2001. Obviously, Netflix was a very different company then from what it is now. We were still a DVD rental company, still in all-out bloody battle with Blockbuster, the 800-pound gorilla in the marketplace, obviously. And it was a startup still. We hadn't reached 1 million customers yet. And at that time, what I saw Reed Hastings and the rest of the leadership team do was say, look, we need to fight this battle. We need to win against Blockbuster. We need to build the company. We need to reach this number of subscribers. We had a very clear mission to do that. And to set aside research and development money and make sure that we were already thinking ahead to what was the next challenge going to be. How are we going to be ready for what came after this? And so they had a research and development team that was looking into what we were then calling set-top boxes, which was the predecessor to streaming as we now know it. And that didn't come about until, so Roku as a standalone set-top box or standalone player didn't come about until 2006. And Netflix didn't have a dedicated streaming plan until 2007. And so you think in 2000, to have been a startup running up against this massively funded, hugely distributed company, when you're the upstart that has no guarantee that you're going to win that battle, to have been making decisions that are the better part of a decade ahead of where you're at is massively visionary and is so much about that insights, foresights. I mean, never articulated in as many words, but you could see how genius that is. You could see the clarity of understanding purpose and understanding, asking the right questions and being guided by the right metrics and just having that sense of how confidently you can make those decisions when all of those pieces are together.
Yes. What a powerful story and example for sure. Well, I know that our listeners are going to want to get connected and stay connected to as much Kate O'Neill brilliance as they possibly can. Where can we send people? Where should they go? What links do we put in the show notes?
Oh, I look forward to having people come visit koinsights.com. And the book is linked from the site. There's an area of the site that has books and the What Matters Next page. But of course, it's also promoted all through the site. So you'll find it really easily. On that page, on the What Matters Next book listing page, there is also a quiz that we think is really fun. And I think people will enjoy. It's sort of a BuzzFeed style quiz, but it's an assessment to help determine what your decision-making style is. You know, whether you're someone who is skewing toward this forward-looking or backward-looking sort of approach. And depending on which way you skew, we're going to offer you some resources and help you make sure you make the best decisions and the most timely and appropriate and insights-driven and foresights-driven decisions that are going to help make things more future-ready for you going forward. So you will find that on koinsights.com.
Tremendous. Well, quad cool, Kate O'Neill. thank you for being with us and sharing your brilliance.
Thank you, David. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.